Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So in the 5 years I've been doing this, I've seen a great deal of dishonest bullshit from journalists and feminists, more than I ever wanted to see. But the story I'm about to present to you today really does take the cake. It really is up there amongst the absolute worst that I've come across, and that's no exaggeration. The sheer audacity of these scumbags is incredible. The way that they've lied and manipulated statistics in such a way that they can paint women as victims and men as the evil perpetrators of, well, just about everything, I guess, is incredibly telling. So let's start this video with a definition. And that definition is of the word femicide. Now, femicide is the killing of a woman or a girl. Okay, so that, let's be clear, it has to involve the death of a female. It goes on to say, in particular by a man. Once again, that's very important for what's coming up. And it goes on to say, and on account of her gender. So, in other words, it's not just a normal murder, but it's a murder specifically towards a woman or a girl because of her gender. So it would be a similar hate crime to, say, a Jewish man being murdered because of his religion, or a black person being killed because of the colour of their skin. You know, like, say, the KKK murdering a black man, for example. Right? They're not doing it just because it's a random murder or a robbery or anything like that. They're doing it as a hate crime. So, the meaning of femicide is very specific. Just to be 100% clear, it is something done to women, mainly done by men, and as a hate crime towards women because of their gender. That is a very, very clear definition of what femicide is. Now that we've got that out the way, let's have a look at this article that appeared in news.com.au a couple of days ago at the time of this recording. Powerful map reveals dark and shameful reality. A powerful interactive map has pulled back the curtain on a dark and deadly reality of living in Australia. Well, that sounds pretty bad. An interactive map that puts violent deaths into stunning perspective has gone live in a first of its kind for Australia. The Red Heart campaign has commemorated more than 1,000 lives of women and children lost to violence in an online interactive memorial which its creators have called the Australian Femicide Map. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? First of all, not all children in Australia that are murdered are actually female. So, including male children who have been murdered under the description of femicide is not exactly accurate, is it? Now, the other interesting thing is that roughly about 2/3 of all children killed are killed by their mothers. So, think about this for a second. If a male child is killed by his female mother, apparently that now is an act of femicide. That is an act of a female being killed by a male because the victim is female, even though it's a female killing a male. Have you ever heard such fucking bullshit before? Now, some of you may be thinking, but Bane, maybe they're just including homicides done towards female children which have been committed by males. Well, if you think that, you'd be wrong. I had a quick look at the map. I just clicked on some hearts around Melbourne, and one of the first ones I came across, like literally I think it was the second or third one I clicked upon, was from April 8th, 2015, where 3 young children were murdered by their mother. Apparently that is an act of femicide now. So the mother drove the 3 children into a lake and killed them. She survived. here's another example of femicide, where 2 young girls and a young boy were murdered by their mother back in 2011. Yes, apparently that's a good example of males murdering women because they're female. And here's 2 male children who were also murdered by their mother. Before murdering the 2 children, she emailed, "I will try my luck in my next life." So a mother killing her two children is an act of femicide now. How interesting. It's amazing how these things get redefined just so they can be inflated, isn't it? And just randomly clicking around, I've found a lot of cases where people have been murdered and the perpetrator hasn't been found. It includes such things as an elderly woman being murdered in her home by robbers. Now, obviously, that's not a good thing. I'm in no way excusing what's happened, but I don't know how we can class that as a hate crime towards women. It's a result of a fucking robbery. And she wasn't the only one that was murdered. Her husband was murdered as well. I guess that's another case of femicide then. But you'll note that only she is listed here for some reason. That's a bit strange. Oh, and here's a case from 1885 where 2 young children were murdered as well as their father by the mother. Now, clearly that is a case of femicide if I've ever heard it. Clearly that is a case of women being murdered because they're women. So do you see the problem with this map? Calling it the femicide map is not exactly accurate, is it? Anyway, let's go back to the article. It goes on to say, all of the hearts you see represent women and children lost to violence in Australia. Yes, and at least 2/3 of those children have been murdered by their mothers. But, you're not going to mention that anywhere, are you? According to a Red Heart statement released today, simple tap on a heart and the victim's story and photo will pop up, as will the location of their death. Campaign founder Cheryl Lee Moody, who is a News Corp Australia employee, has spearheaded the research, photo gathering and story writing for the project. Its purpose is to shine a light on violence against women and children by sharing stories of survival, providing material aid and lobbying for change, according to the organisation. We have chosen to give no start or end date for this ongoing collection of photographs and stories, a Red Heart campaign spokesperson said. This gallery is the only one of its type in Australia and exists to honour and remember those who deserve to live long and happy lives but were never given the chance. And unfortunately there's no shortage of victims to feature on the map. Now it then goes on to talk about some specific stories where women and children were murdered by men, but no mention of any children being murdered by their mothers. Strangely, not a single mention of that anywhere. And looking at their Facebook campaign, I can't find any examples of them posting articles where a mother has killed her children, even though they're reasonably common. There are stories posted by them about women being murdered by men and children being murdered by men and, mainly their fathers, but no stories about children being murdered by their mothers that I can see. It's almost like it's a campaign against men, isn't it? It goes on to say, the 2018 homicide statistics broken down by Red Heart show that 38 women have been killed this year. 34 of those deaths were allegedly at the hands of men, and 28 of those were related to family violence. 3 of the victims were allegedly killed by another woman, and 1 situation remains unknown. Figures by the Red Heart campaign also show that 69 men have been murdered so far in 2018. It is alleged most of these deaths were caused by another man. Of these 69 men who have died, 11 of them were allegedly related to family violence. It is alleged that out of those 10 deaths, 5 were killed by another male and 6 were killed by a female. Red Heart Campaign researcher Catherine Benson said, "The statistics showed we are not at risk of terrorism, we are at risk of each other. Growing up in the 80s, I was taught about stranger danger," she said. "Nobody taught me to be cautious of the people that I love." Miss Benson's work for the Red Heart Campaign has previously prompted some critics to label her a man-hater. Well, I can kind of see how some people might come to that conclusion, considering mothers who kill their children have mysteriously been left out of the equation. It's almost like you're focusing solely on male perpetrators and then making the claim that, this is something done entirely by men, including male children who have been murdered by their mothers under the term femicide, would suggest either incredible dishonesty or an incredible amount of stupidity. I'm betting it's the first one, to be honest. But let's continue. "I don't know anyone who works in this field who actually hates men." Yeah, I find that hard to believe. But next. "We just don't want you to die," she recently told the All Men Can AU podcast. "Men are killing men. Men's rights activists are lying about male violence." Are we? Are we the ones lying about male violence? Are we the ones, including male children being killed by their mothers, under the term femicide? Because that definitely seems like lying to me. Now, this is the bit that really pissed me off. She goes on to say, "Men are lying about statistics around male suicide." Yeah, I'd love a clarification for that claim. Unfortunately, there's no citation or nothing to explain what she means by that. How the fuck are we lying about male suicide? And she finishes off, "and we should all be outraged by that." I think we should be outraged that you've made such a fucking claim. Okay, so I'm guessing a lot of you are very pissed off at this moment, and you have every right to be pissed off. Trust me, I'm pissed off too. But can I encourage you, please do not go to their Facebook or Twitter or whatever and leave abusive comments. It's perfectly understandable if you're pissed off, but please do not leave any comment that can be interpreted in any way as abusive or threatening, because they will use that to derail the conversation, and the focus will become entirely about that comment and not debunking their bullshit. So if you are going to contact them and leave a comment, be polite, be accurate, and use facts and statistics. Ask lots of questions. So let's have a look at a couple of stories of mothers killing their children in the last year. Mother Marie Crabtree allegedly killed her offspring for financial gain. It says, to her surviving daughter, Marie Crabtree was the mum who helped her rescue small animals in need of a new home. But police now allege that not only was Miss Crabtree secretly torturing her daughter, she had also murdered 2 of her adult children, staging their overdose deaths to make them look like suicides for her own financial gain. Here's another one. Mother who killed 3-year-old son because he looked like his father, jailed for 33 years. And then there's this one. Mum charged with murder over 8-year-old boy's death on Mornington Peninsula. Now, I got a little bit curious about this last one because the Mornington Peninsula is part of Melbourne. So I thought I'd look it up and see if it was actually on their map. And lo and behold, it is actually on their map. So here we have another story of a young boy being murdered by his mother, allegedly murdered by his mother, and this is classed as femicide for some strange, bizarre reason. So I thought I'd do a little bit of digging to see if they mentioned this particular case anywhere on their Facebook page. And lo and behold, I found, to my surprise, that they actually did. So let me offer a correction for what I said earlier in this video, where I said that I couldn't find any examples of them posting stories about mothers killing their children. Now, at the time I recorded that was actually true. I went through numerous postings on their Facebook page and didn't find a single case. But after doing a little bit more research and digging a bit deeper, it seems that occasionally they do post such stories. So it's only fair that I make that correction. Now, the interesting thing is, in the comments of that particular post, Rachel Harvey says, "This child was murdered by his mother. How is that related to femicide? The child wasn't female and he was murdered by a female." And that's a perfect point, Rachel. That's the exact point I've been making this entire video. And we actually get an answer from the Red Heart campaign. They say, "We acknowledge all female and child victims of violence regardless of perpetrator gender. The Femicide Project counts every murder in Australia, as do we. In fact, we are the only organisation keeping an up-to-date tally on all violent deaths. We are not sure why you find it disturbing that we choose to do this." Now that's an interesting dodge at the end. Rachel Harvey isn't finding it disturbing that they're recording deaths, just curious why they would claim that it's femicide. And that is a very interesting point. If you're just concerned about violence in society, then why make a map specifically for female and child victims and call it femicide? Now, I can fully understand why you'd make a map talking about children who have been killed, but if we're including adults, then surely both males and females should be included, right? Unless you see that there's a difference between violence towards women and violence towards men. Now, looking at the Red Heart campaign's website, they clearly do see a difference between violence perpetrated towards women and violence perpetrated towards men. They make a clear distinction and clearly refer to this as gendered violence. This is the typical feminist definition of domestic violence, etc., etc. You've heard it all before. You've all heard explanations about the Duluth model. It's the same shit, basically. So if they're using that model where they're talking about male violence towards female victims and victims who are children, then why would they include children who are victims of females? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It seems they're contradicting their very basis. If you're going to acknowledge that females can be perpetrators too, then why such a focus on male perpetrators, and why only focus on female and child victims? But if you're going to make the argument that violence is gendered, which they clearly do on their website, then why include female perpetrators against male children? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, if I were to speculate, I would say that maybe they only see female and child victims as being important. Surprise, surprise. Or possibly it's just another way to inflate the statistics. But I think it's pretty clear that they see females and children as protected groups and males as being the unprotected group, as they see them as perpetrators. In other words, this is typical feminism in the sense that you have an oppressed group, in this case children and women, and a perpetrator or oppressing group, which is typically always male. Now, I do have a couple of updates just before I finish. The first one is the story I just mentioned before about the mother killing her child on the Mornington Peninsula. Well, an interesting twist in that case is she was found dead in her cell yesterday. So I don't know how she died. That hasn't been released yet. I think the police said there aren't any suspicious circumstances, so I'm not exactly sure how someone would die in custody like that. Maybe it was suicide, maybe it was natural causes, who knows. But I thought I should add that because I came across that soon after I had recorded the previous bit that you've just listened to. The other update I wanted to give was I actually discovered what they meant when they said men's rights activists are lying about male suicide. And it's pretty fucking disgusting. I think I'll save that for another video though. I think that deserves its own video. Needless to say, these people are fucking scumbags. And instead of presenting legitimate arguments, what they do is they exaggerate and distort things, and their entire argumentation is based on emotion. And clearly anyone who disagrees with their cult, because that's what this form of feminism is seen as a threat. Now, just to finish off, I want to make a clarification. I want something to be fucking crystal clear, because I know that if I don't, I will be taken out of context by these people. And I pretty much guarantee they'll do that anyway. But let me be clear. When I say mothers kill their children as well, I'm not saying only mothers kill children. I'm not saying all mothers kill children. I'm not saying all women are violent. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. But we're living in the world now where I have to clarify something like that, because, otherwise I will be accused of saying all women are violent and men never commit violence at all, or some bullshit like that. Humans are violent. Humans lie. Humans cheat. And humans includes male and female. And if you decide that your feminism excludes females from doing any of those things, then I hate to inform you about this, but you're actually a female supremacist. You're actually saying that females are somehow superior to males. They're not human like males are. They're somehow holy creatures which stand above the corrupt, animalistic males. So let's get it straight. When I say mothers kill their children, I am simply providing the other part of the argument. The part of the argument which is so conveniently left out by people like the ones featured in this video. The ones who focus almost entirely, if not entirely, on male violence while giving a free pass to female violence every fucking chance they get. Because if you're really concerned about children and the safety of children, then you'd be talking about the fact that mothers are far more likely to murder their kids than fathers. Once again, hashtag not all mothers. I think it's pretty evident that most parents, the vast majority of parents, do not murder their kids. But out of the ones who do, mothers are far more likely to be the perpetrators. So anyway, I look forward to being quote mined by these people and then doing a response with the proper context.